Welcome back, history lovers. I'm Gallus Thrax, and I'm here to crush some cringe misconceptions about the Pope. Number 1, the Pope is not a successor to the Roman emperors. I think this partially comes from the very condensed and abridged version of history, especially when it comes to late antiquity / the early Middle Ages, that is taught in our schools today. And in the last few years, I have seen this idea being propagated by many internet conspiracists. Along with having a very surface level knowledge of history, many of these conspiracists have probably read a document called the Donation of Constantine. The document is a supposed imperial decree written by the first Christian emperor Constantine in the early 4th century. The decree gives Pope Sylvester I full control over the western part of the Roman Empire. The document is actually a forgery written in the 8th century. The document gets some historical chronology wrong, and it is not written in the style of Latin of the 4th century. It has been solidly debunked since the year 1440. If you have studied Constantine, you know that Constantine did not establish a new capital at Constantinople simply to give up the West. Constantine made himself the sole ruler of the empire in the year 324 after over 30 years of divided rule under a system called the Tetrarchy. Constantine's father, Constantius, was one of the original tetrarchs, and it was the custom of the tetrarchs to establish their own capital cities within their realms. So basically, when Constantine establishes the new capital at Constantinople, which he called New Rome, he was basically showing himself as being the Uber Tetrarch. Another source of this confusion is that the Pope currently holds the title of Pontifex Maximus, which the emperors also held. Pontifex Maximus roughly translates from Latin as chief priest. Pontiff comes from the word pons, meaning bridge. So a bridge from the human world to the divine, while Maximus means the greatest. Number 1, the title of Pontifex Maximus existed for hundreds of years before there were emperors. Number 2, the Pope did not take the title of Pontifex Maximus until the Renaissance. Caesar Augustus, the first Roman emperor, took the title of Pontifex Maximus in the year 12 BC. This was almost 2 decades after he had achieved absolute power. Chief priest was just one of the many different republican institutions which Augustus combined into himself to create absolute monarchical power with traditional legitimacy. These other positions included censor, tribune, and consul. It should be noted, though, that the Augustan regime in particular was a very religious one. So if you're someone who thinks that the Olympic pagans never had high moral standards, you should check out the regime of Caesar Augustus. Clarification number 2. The Pope was not always the most powerful person in Christian-ruled Europe. The Bishop of Rome, which we now call Pope, was not present at the Council of Nicaea in AD 325. There was someone there with the title of Pope, but he was actually the Bishop of Alexandria, Egypt, and has nothing to do with the modern popes. He apparently sent 2 representatives to the Council of Nicaea, and I do have to give him a pass. Nicaea is quite far from Rome. Nicaea is on the northern coast of modern Turkey. But hey, whatever, he still could have gone. And this was the most important meeting of Christian leaders in world history. The Council of Nicaea confirmed the Trinity. It canonized the idea of God, which most Christians follow today. As I just mentioned, there were other bishops within the Christian Roman Empire who were called Pope. Pope comes from the Greek word pappos, meaning father. This is to make the point that there were many great bishops, and there was not one all-powerful bishop that ruled over the others at this time. Towards the end of the 4th century, Emperor Theodosius did declare that the Bishop of Rome was the preeminent bishop over the other bishops. Theodosius was the last ruler of both East and West united. After his death, the empire was permanently divided. Theodosius ruled the empire from Constantinople, and at this point, the administrative center of the West was no longer the city of Rome. During most of the 4th century, it was what is now called the city of Milan. And at the beginning of the 5th century, the capital of the West was moved to Ravenna. This declaration by Theodosius was probably a political move in order to confirm that Rome was still the spiritual capital of the Roman Empire. It was a way of having political continuity in a very calamitous age. Speaking of calamities, the Western Roman Empire would end in the year 476, when a Germanic military officer named Odoacer would stage a coup and declare himself King of Italy. Odoacer's coup of 476 is considered to be the official start of the Middle Ages. This Germanic coup did not hand the Pope the reins of power of the West. In fact, it made him significantly less powerful. Odoacer was a Christian, but he was not a member of what we now call the Catholic Church. Odoacer was an Arian. Arian spelt with an I and not a Y. Arian Christians worshipped Jesus as divine, but saw him as the creation of God the Father, and therefore not equal to God the Father. Arianism had been condemned by the Council of Nicaea for being heretical. But Arian Christianity was the dominant religion of the Germanic tribes which took apart the Western Roman Empire. So when Odoacer is overthrown in a coup by another Germanic officer, the Ostrogothic Theodoric, Italy will still be ruled by Arians. In fact, in the late 5th and early 6th centuries, most of Western Europe, as well as the western coast of North Africa, was ruled by Arians. So, before we move on, number 3, the Pope was never in history the boss of all Christianity. Then, in the 530s, we had the Eastern Empire, led by Justinian the Great, reconquering the West. So the popes were living under the rule of the Roman Empire again, and Arianism had been smashed. But this period, from 537 to 752, we call the Byzantine papacy, was also not a time of very powerful popes. This is best illustrated by the story of Pope Martin the Confessor. Pope Martin the Confessor was the only pope of the Byzantine papacy whose election was not pre-approved by the emperor in Constantinople.
Yes.
Martin furthered this independent streak by criticizing the theological writings of Emperor Constans II. The emperor responded by accusing Martin of being a collaborator with the newly established Islamic Caliphate. The Pope was arrested and taken to Constantinople to stand trial, where eventually he was sentenced to exile in Crimea. The era of the Byzantine papacy would end in the 750s with the Lombard conquest of the Italian capital of Ravenna. The fall of Ravenna left the city of Rome cut off from the power of Constantinople. Fearing the brutality of the Lombards, Pope Stephen II called on Frankish king Pepin the Short for help. Pepin would intervene in Italy, defeat the Lombards, and hand the Pope control over central Italy. The donation of Pepin of 756 is the birth of the Papal States. This is also the birth of the Papal Frankish Alliance, which would live on through Charlemagne and then further through the Holy Roman Empire, which is not holy, not Roman, not an empire. Number 4, the Pope did not inherit ancient, esoteric, secret knowledge from the pagans. They are not doing secret pagan rituals in the Vatican. Big deal if there is a Mithrium underneath the Vatican. The Vatican is built on top of the suburbs of the largest pagan city to ever exist in world history. So there are Mithriums everywhere, all around Rome. Most popes have been gentlemen and scholars who had to balance religious affairs with political affairs. And some, like Pope Paul III, were total studs and great patrons of the arts.